The Second Congo War, Africa's deadliest conflict. The Second Congo War, 1998 to 2003, was one of the deadliest conflicts in modern history, often referred to as the African World War. It involved multiple African nations and various armed groups, leading to immense human suffering, economic devastation, and long-term instability in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, DRC. The war resulted in over 5 million deaths, making it the deadliest conflict since World War II. This tragic war was fueled by ethnic rivalries, political power struggles, and the exploitation of the DRC's vast natural resources. Origins of the conflict. The roots of the Second Congo War can be traced back to the First Congo War, 1996 to 1997, which led to the overthrow of the longtime dictator Mobutu Sese Seko. His corrupt and authoritarian regime had ruled for decades, but he was ousted by Laurent Kabila, who took power with the backing of Rwanda and Uganda. Initially, Kabila was seen as a liberator, but his rule soon proved to be autocratic and unpopular. After taking power, Kabila distanced himself from his Rwandan and Ugandan allies, fearing their growing influence in Congolese affairs. He expelled Rwandan and Ugandan forces from the DRC, sparking outrage among these former allies. In response, Rwanda and Uganda launched an invasion in August 1998, backing Congolese rebel groups in an attempt to overthrow Kabila. The spread of war, a regional conflict. What started as an internal conflict in the DRC quickly escalated into a regional war involving multiple African nations. On one side were Rwanda and Uganda, who supported rebel factions such as the Rally for Congolese Democracy, RCD, and the Movement for the Liberation of Congo, MLC. On the other side, Kabila received military support from Angola, Zimbabwe, Namibia, Chad, and Sudan. These countries had their own interests in the conflict, including securing their borders, accessing Congo's rich mineral resources, and preventing instability from spreading into their territories. The war became a battleground for foreign armies, each with its own agenda. While Rwanda justified its intervention by claiming it was hunting down Hutu militias responsible for the 1994 Rwandan genocide, Uganda sought economic gains by controlling Congolese resources. Meanwhile, Zimbabwe and Angola aimed to protect their political and economic interests in the region. Ethnic violence and human rights abuses. The war was marked by extreme violence against civilians, including mass killings, sexual violence, and the recruitment of child soldiers. Various militias and armed groups, some backed by foreign governments, engaged in atrocities to establish control over land and resources. Ethnic tensions, particularly between Hutu, Tutsi, Luba, and other Congolese ethnic groups, fueled further massacres and human rights abuses. One of the worst humanitarian crises unfolded in Ituri province, where ethnic fighting between the Hema and Lenda tribes resulted in tens of thousands of deaths. Meanwhile, Eastern Congo became a lawless region, with armed groups exploiting local populations for forced labor in gold, diamond, and coltan mines. Rape was widely used as a weapon of war, with tens of thousands of women and girls becoming victims of sexual violence. The widespread use of child soldiers, often abducted and forced to fight under brutal conditions, further highlighted the horrors of the war. Assassination of Laurent Kabila and rise of Joseph Kabila. In January 2001, Laurent Kabila was assassinated by one of his bodyguards in Kinshasa. His young and inexperienced son, Joseph Kabila, took power. Despite skepticism about his leadership abilities, Joseph Kabila quickly gained international support and initiated peace talks to end the war. His diplomatic approach led to negotiations with rebel factions and foreign governments, culminating in a peace agreement in 2002. By 2003, most foreign troops had withdrawn, and a transitional government was formed to rebuild the country. Economic and humanitarian devastation. The war left the DRC in ruins. Infrastructure was destroyed, entire communities were displaced, and disease and famine claimed millions of lives. The country's rich resources, instead of being used for development, were looted by foreign armies and warlords. The illegal exploitation of diamonds, gold, copper, cobalt, and coltan fueled the conflict, with profits financing armed groups rather than helping the local population. The humanitarian crisis was staggering. By 2003, over 5 million people had died, not just from violence but from disease, malnutrition, and lack of medical care. Millions more were displaced, seeking refuge in overcrowded camps or neighboring countries. The conflict also contributed to the spread of HIV, AIDS, and other infectious diseases, further devastating the population. End of the war and aftermath. While the official end of the war came in 2003 with the withdrawal of foreign troops and the establishment of a transitional government, violence in the DRC continued. Armed militias, including remnants of the RCD, MLC, and other groups, refused to lay down their weapons. The eastern DRC remained unstable, with ongoing clashes between rebel factions and government forces. In 2006, Joseph Kabila was elected as the country's first democratically elected president, but his government struggled to rebuild the war-torn nation. Corruption, weak governance, and continued rebel activity hindered progress. The Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda, FDLR, a Hutu militia group, remained active in eastern Congo, prolonging the violence. The notorious March 23rd movement, M23, backed by Rwanda, emerged in 2012, seizing large territories before being defeated by a UN-backed Congolese military offensive. Despite peace agreements, the DRC continues to face violence, poverty, and political instability. The scars of the war remain, with survivors still seeking justice and accountability for the atrocities committed during the conflict. Conclusion. The Second Congo War was not just a battle for political power, it was a war driven by greed, ethnic hatred, and regional rivalries. It stands as a stark reminder of how international conflicts can devastate nations and leave lasting wounds on societies. Although the war officially ended in 2003, the Democratic Republic of the Congo continues to grapple with its consequences. Today, the DRC remains a fragile state, struggling with governance, economic recovery, and security challenges. The world must not forget the millions of lives lost in Africa's deadliest war. By learning from the past, supporting peace initiatives, and addressing the root causes of conflict, the international community can help ensure that such a tragedy never happens again. What are your thoughts on the Second Congo War? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more history documentaries. If you like my video, subscribe my channel.